Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Allison and I'm happy to have you here today. We are celebrating the new aptly named Celebrate Release from Simon Says Stamp, and these are the two cards that I'm going to be sharing in this video today. They're very similar, they use the same embossing folder, but a few slight differences that I will go into. Now, this was the first card that I made. I didn't do this on camera, and I did this card really quick. This is a very easy technique, but after doing this one, I learned a few things that I wanted to change for the second one. Mainly, I wanted to add a fifth flower because odd numbers are better for design, and I wanted to add a little bit more shading to the leaves. So here is the second card that I made, and you'll see those changes that I just talked about. Now here is the embossing folder. This is Blossom Bunches, and it is not only an embossing folder, it comes with two dies. So these dies match the large top flower and then the small flower on the right, or the lower right. So here is a green piece of cardstock that I have embossed with this folder. Isn't it gorgeous? So this is a 3D embossing folder, so there are certain parts that are raised more than others. So I am doing a very easy technique today, using very few tools, and I'm using my Distress ink cubes, and I am going direct to paper with my cubes. Now, I came in a little hot and heavy at first, trying to get my bearings, but I am just trying to ink up the leaves right now. It doesn't really matter if I get ink on the flowers because I'm going to be covering these flowers with the actual die cuts. But I had mentioned how this is a 3D folder, so the flowers themselves have the highest raised edges. So for these leaves, you can't really tell, but I'm angling this little ink cube to get at those leaves, and especially when the leaves come to a point, I am really trying to go in at an angle so I don't get ink on the flat areas of this panel. So here you can see I have gone around all the leaves once, and now I'm just going around again and darkening it up a little bit. And I've got a little ink on some of that flat area, but that's okay. Now here's the shading that I had talked about that I didn't do on the first card. I'm going around where the flowers meet the leaves, and I have one of my Waffle Flower Shader Plus 0 brushes to get in there. And I'm even going in with a darker ink here. And by the way, I list all the colors of inks that I use on my blog. I'll have a link to my blog below. But you can see I'm really trying to get that area dark or darker. So again, I'm coming in with this darker color green. So this kind of looks like a hot mess right now, but remember, we're going to be covering. And speaking of covering, here are the flowers. So I have cut different colors of cardstock with those dies, and now it's time to emboss them. So again, these dies match up with the flowers in the folder, and there are two ways you can do this. If you lay the flower on top of the embossed, the raised edge of the folder, you can see how that matches up. Or you can put it on the debossed side, and it just kind of snaps right in there. You can see I'm moving my fingers and it's not moving, and then you can just close it. So it's really easy to line up the dies in the embossing folder. And I don't add tape or anything to this. I just keep it closed until I get over to my die cutting machine, and it's really easy. I've never had any problem. But look at that flower now. Now, I've already colored 3 of the flowers, and I'm going to color the pink one to show you how easy it is. So again, I'm taking my cube and I'm going direct to paper with my cube. And I'm just going to go around the edges first. And what I've done is try to select an ink color that is slightly darker than the colored cardstock that I've chosen. And the ink looks pretty dark at first, but it will dry back. And now that I've gone around the edges, now I'm going to come in and do those raised edges in the middle. And I'm just swiping my ink cube flat across those raised edges. And it's amazing how much detail comes out when you add this darker color. And you can also do this with white pigment ink. And I could have taken brushes, I could have taken a brayer. I just felt like doing something really simple. So if you don't have all the tools, and believe me, I have all the tools, but if you don't have the tools and you're just starting out, do what I'm doing. Take an ink cube and just swipe it across your embossed images. So here, like I said, the ink will dry back. It goes on dark at first and then it will dry. So here I'm coming in and I was just darkening it up. Now that I've colored my flowers, I'm going to come in and add a little bit more detail. This is Lunar paste, and I had this press and seal in there and it's kind of a mess now. So I'm not going to reuse this piece of press and seal when I close up my bottle. So I am going to use it right now though. And again, I'm not using any special tools. I'm just using my finger, and I'm taking a little bit of this Lunar paste on my fingertip. And just like with the ink, I'm first going to go around all the edges. And when I grab some of the Lunar paste, I'm dabbing off the excess onto this scratch piece of paper. Just because I don't want to put too much on the flower. So that's just, by dabbing it off, it's just how I'm controlling how much is going on. It was kind of hard to see on the yellow flower, but on this pink flower, it's a little bit easier for you to see this Lunar paste. And even this one on camera, it's kind of hard to see in real life. This Lunar paste is just gorgeous, and it just gives that little extra detail to this card, I think. All right, so my flowers are done. And before I put them onto my card panel, I'm going to stamp a sentiment. This is the new Celebrating You stamp set, and it has adorable critters and some really great sentiments. I'll actually show you a few cards at the end of this video that I made with that adorable stamp set, where I actually colored, which is, it's just not something I do lately. But here I am stamping the sentiment right onto my embossed panel using my MISTI, and I'm going to use some gold embossing powder and heat that up with my tool. And even though my panel was already embossed, it was easy to put in my MISTI and go ahead and stamp this. So there we go. And now I'm going to do something that I do a lot. You've probably seen me do this in a lot of videos. I'm going around the edges with the green ink and just adding shading to the edges. And it just kind of draws your attention towards the middle, or your focal point. And in this case, there's a lot of focal points because there's a lot of flowers, but I don't know. I think adding this shading around the edge just makes it a little bit more dramatic. So here you can see that I cut a fifth flower, that pink flower down in the corner. And by the way, these are new cardstock packs from Memory Box. This is 110 pound paper, so it's kind of hard for me to flip through because it's thick paper. But these are really great for layered die sets when you want each layer to be a different color. So this is the Sunrise color pack, and the first one that I showed you was the blush color paper pack. And so I am just kind of organizing these flowers. What I want to do is just to make sure that I'm covering up the embossed flowers. So I'm just adding this pink one in the corner, and I can push down on the part that's going to go underneath this orange one. You can see that I adhered that pink one with glue, and I'm adhering the orange one with thin foam squares. But when I'm adhering one of these with glue, because it's embossed, you don't want to press down and lose some of that embossed detail. So you'll see, and you saw with that first little pink flower, now you'll see with the yellow flower that I'll push down on the glued area where this flower is going to cover it. So in a second well, I guess you didn't see me push down. Anyway, I pushed down on this yellow flower on an area that was going to be covered by this big pink flower. Just try not to press down too much on an embossed image, or you'll lose some of the detail. And speaking of detail, this sentiment was just looking a little flat to me. It was just kind of getting lost. So I re-stamped it on a separate piece of paper, and I fussy cut it. And then I went around the edges with some green ink just to pull it out even more, just to make it stand out a little bit more. But I still wanted it to be on green. While I wanted it to stand out, I didn't want it to stand out too much. So now it's time for the final details. These are PinkFresh Studio glitter drops. I just love these. This particular color is the Sparkle and Shine Ombre color, one of my favorites. I think on the first card I used the blush color glitter drops. And that's the final detail that I'm adding to this card. So we are done. And obviously for the first card, I did the same thing. But like I said, I didn't add that fifth flower, and I didn't use the tiny brush to add the shading to the leaves. So that is it for that card. And here is the final image. And this is more of a traditional color palette than the first one. I love them both. And, speaking of that Celebrating You stamp set that I used a sentiment on the green card, this is one of the cards that I made for the release. And the little panel on the left side of this card, that's another embossing folder. I believe it's called Spun Glass. And if you saw my video where I used the magicals, I created that in that video. And here is another card I made with that adorable set. Aren't these little critters adorable? These are little unicorns. And that's another embossing folder in the back. That is, I think it's called the Streaming embossing folder from last month's release. And that is it. Details for these particular cards with these critters you can find on my blog post from, I believe it was April 18th. That was the day of the release, the Celebrate release. But for today's cards, these floral cards, head over to my blog. I'll have a link below. And this is a blog hop. So definitely head over to my blog, because by leaving a comment, you could have a chance at a $25 gift card to Simon Says Stamp. So if you're watching this in a timely fashion, you'll be able to participate in that. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, I really appreciate you being here. I know I've been so absent lately, but life, I can't even, I'm like a chicken with its head cut off, running in 10 different directions. So I miss you all. I miss being able to do this more often, and hopefully, at some point in the next few months, we'll get back on track. Thanks again, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.